Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CSP webinar lecture 12 entitled Privacy, Surveillance, Capitalism, and Tips on How to Protect Your Data and Identity. Welcome to the Computing Society of the Philippines. This is in cooperation with the Department of Computer Science, University of the Philippines. So we have our webinar rules. The participants are encouraged to ask their questions using the Q&A section of the app. Just indicate your name and your organization. So we will only be accepting your question until the end of the talk. So let me introduce our the webinar lecturer speaker. He is an educational technology coach, ICT specialist, and event strategist at the UP IT Development Center. Formerly a faculty member of the UP College of Education, he had implemented one-to-one learning with iPads and had trailblazed global EdTech webinars in the Philippines since 2012. He's an Apple Distinguished Educator, Apple Professional Learning Provider, and a privacy and security advocate. He is also a professional member of the ACM Special Interest Group on Computer Science Education and delivers tech workshops such as coding classes for all levels of students. A professional development for teachers, and webinars about digital citizenship, which includes digital parenting and privacy awareness. He also supports initiatives that defend free speech and fight surveillance. Friends, let us welcome our CSP webinar lecture 12 speaker for this morning. We have Mr. Noel Feria. Sir Noel.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, wait, hold on. Here. There. All right, so good morning, everyone. Can you view my slides now?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. All right, so thank you again for the introduction, and thank you for this invitation to present about privacy, surveillance, capitalism, and tips on how to protect your data and identity. So this is Noel Feria from the University of the Philippines, and this is again a very, very important topic, especially in this this time of pandemic where we are all usually confined to accessing the internet and all forms of technology available at home. Okay, so let me start with this particular statement. Data is the new oil, and what makes it different is that not only does it leak from machines, but it also leaks through humans too. Okay, so imagine there has been so many there were so many data breaches that occurred in the past years. If you're going to do a search online, there are very critical ones such as the Comelec, and some of those involve social media and even the defacement of some government websites, and even crucial ones such as student data. Okay, so imagine the data that you're creating, and then it's being transmitted everywhere. Okay, so that's why it's called data is a new oil. It's very expensive. I mean, you can actually get profit from it because of data, and it can possibly leak not only from machines, not only from computers, but sometimes or most of the time humans leak the data from other people. It can be their own data. It can also be the data of their friends or families. Okay, so what's very important is that we need to be cautious. So for example, in the case of in a simple chat, just like in this particular comic screen, is that there can be some apps online that can possibly be in the form of a survey, and then you just answer, like for example, what's your favorite book, what's your dog's name, and what street did you grow up on, only to find out that some of those can actually be used against you in the form of identity theft, or maybe in the form of hacking your accounts. Okay, so that's why we need to be cautious when we participate in whatever online activity, may it be a trending one or maybe it be a form of a simple survey. we need to be cautious of those, okay? Because maybe there is a malicious hacker that can take advantage of those particular data. Maybe you're using that for your security questions, okay? So that's why I'll be, later on, I'll be discussing more on the tips too, on how to protect your identity and of course your data. Primarily, again, because of data leaks and breaches, how do you take control of your digital identity and keep your personal information secure? And is digital privacy important? Because in some cases, there are some people who just post online any form of information, like for example, on Facebook or Instagram or on Twitter or even TikTok. They will say that, it's okay to post because after all, I'm not a criminal. I'm not doing anything bad. I don't care if somebody's looking at what I do online. Okay. But that's really a misconception. Okay. You shouldn't think like that because if you think about it, privacy is very, very important. In fact, privacy is recognized as a fundamental human right in the 1948 United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Same right as such as the right to live, the right to access to food, and everything. At the same time, are you comfortable with big tech companies observing and modifying your behavior? So imagine those social media platforms, those big tech companies that you're using right now. Are you comfortable with them manipulating you without you knowing it? Okay. And sometimes not only that, even the government or other non-tech companies can possibly be performing surveillance as well, maybe in the form of websites, maybe in the form of apps. And most importantly is that it's very important that Filipinos understand the concept of surveillance capitalism. To start with surveillance capitalism, this is being coined by a professor, Shoshana Zuboff. Surveillance capitalism is the processing or collecting of human experiences. So imagine now that those particular human experiences can be in the form of, let's say, what you're eating right now, or maybe it can be the form of your location data. It can be in the form of pictures, sounds, or let's say the apps that you use, or let's say you're trying to do e-commerce on your mobile phone or any of your computers, or even offline. Those can be considered as human experiences. Imagine now if those particular human experiences are being collected and then aggregated in the form of behavioral data. And that's why many companies right now, especially the ones that are relying on advertisements, they really want to know how people get in touch with the different products, or let's say they try to predict how a particular consumer is going to avail a particular product. And that's why the behavioral data is now being processed through machine intelligence because of course, the trend of AI, the artificial intelligence and machine learning. It undergoes some processing of machine intelligence, thereby creating prediction products. So if you're thinking like, for example, you're accessing this particular website and then you search for a particular product, and then when you visit another website, you will notice that some of the ads there are very related to the previous product that you search. Okay, so that's why maybe they're saying that it's a form of prediction product, but in reality, you're the one that actually giving them access to the data. Okay, and surveillance capitalism started with Google. Okay, and it started in Google. It started with Sheryl Sandberg. So that was a time when Google tried shifting to the ad model, and Sheryl Sandberg was also known as the typhoid Mary of surveillance capitalism. So she joined Google in 2001, and that was a trend when Google shifted to the ad model so that it can get more profit from it. And imagine now with Sandberg joining the team, she was able to grow the ad and sales team to about from 4,000 and even managed to get as much as 3,590%, I think, in terms of profits, revenues. Well, you can just do a search on that on the internet for the actual values. But imagine that, because it's very, very effective because of the amount of data that can be generated from the user experiences. And we're all aware of, for example, for Google Analytics, we have our websites. For example, if you have Google Analytics deployed on your website, you'll be able to access, or you'll be able to have data from your visitors, the countries they're coming from, and even the computers they're using, or let's say maybe their previous searches, or even their let's say they're doing e-commerce, those can actually be tracked because of Google's very, very effective mechanism on surveillance capitalism. Now imagine that particular strategy of surveillance capitalism joining Facebook. So that's at the time when Zuckerberg hired Sandberg in 2008. So imagine now that the surveillance capitalism strategy or model is now integrated with Facebook's platform that contains so many data from different entities, from different persons all over the world. Okay, and of course, maybe some of you are aware of the Cambridge Analytica story, wherein that this particular platform, also known as Facebook, it was used as a platform for polarizing, or let's say for sending out targeted information, or maybe disinformation or misinformation, so they can be used for political agendas. So imagine that, for example, for campaigns before the elections, they can easily sway people by bombarding them with different types of news. And at the same time, because since it's very easy to target the people because of the networks associated from one user to another. So imagine that with Cambridge Analytica having access not only to a particular user, but also to the friends as well, even the private messages, those can actually be harvested through a particular app. So there are so many ways to do that. And that's why Facebook is very, very controversial when it comes to privacy. So imagine that you're being manipulated without you knowing it. Okay. All right. So there are definitely connections with politics in the US as well as in the Philippines. You can do a search on the internet about this, and um, it's very, very important that we understand how social media is trying to shape our community. Like, for example, in our documentaries, such as in the Netflix, The Great Hack, and also recently, A Thousand Cuts. If you watch it, I think it's on YouTube before, and it will show you how social media is very, very effective, most especially Facebook. Okay. Now, in the case of the having the Facebook data, I mean the user's Facebook data being compromised. So imagine here the impact. Philippines is number 2 in this particular statistic. Though I'm not sure about the latest data about this one, but imagine the number of people affected from the country. And imagine, for example, in the case of one example, in this article, recent article, 309 million Facebook users' phone numbers found online. So imagine now that if these are being leaked, or maybe this particular database is being shared everywhere in the dark web, maybe imagine now, because the thing is, maybe most of the time those phone numbers are being also used for the two-factor authentication or two-step verification to get access to a particular online account. So that's why it's very, very important that you need to be cautious too when giving out your phone numbers or using your phone numbers when creating accounts online. Okay. Next, this is one example. So imagine now that it can possibly have access to your date of birth, maybe your email or your gender, even your devices. Those are possible with Facebook. Okay, later on, I'll discuss more about the data that Facebook is collecting, and maybe the ways of how you can actually request data and download it from the platform. Right now, with the Internet of Things, started maybe probably a decade ago, you need to be cautious now of the IoT devices that we're using at home or maybe everywhere, because those devices might be recording maybe the audio or maybe the video and then being sent somewhere else. Okay, it's very important that you know who owns that particular data or who has access to those data, or are those data encrypted in the first place. Okay, like for example, there are cases that in some countries, they're trying to test by saying the keywords or the reserved keywords, like for example, "Hey Siri," so that they'll check if there's a particular um, smart voice or a smart speaker there, or let's say Alexa. you can actually toggle those, okay, so that you can have an idea of if those particular smart devices are deployed at home. So it's very, very important that you check every IoT device. That's why they're saying that if a particular device is smart or if it's connected, then it's also vulnerable because it's connected to the internet. So make sure, I mean, you need to remember that always. Okay. Now, for example, here, there's a research that covers another way to anonymize device IDs to users. Biometrics. So imagine that particular scenario. You can just check on that later on. And I'll proceed now to the tips on what you can do to protect your identity and your data. Start, of course, with thinking before you click or you tap. Okay, because of course, for every device that you access, usually there's an accompanying screen where you can configure the settings or where you can possibly access information, like for example, of social media, and that it's very important that you read. You read the privacy policy. You read who is creating this particular app, who develops this app, when is this last app updated, or is it still being maintained by the developer? Okay, so there are so many things that you need to scrutinize when it comes to particular websites, okay, or apps, or let's say devices. In the case of internet connections, since we're at home, or maybe some of us might be just using a common Wi-Fi, it's important that you need to use a virtual private network or a VPNs, because this one creates a safe and encrypted connection over less secure networks, such as, of course, public Wi-Fi. So an example of a VPN that has possibly free access is Proton VPN. Okay, and there's also Windscribe. Okay, so these are examples of VPN. You can just try to compare the VPN services later on, which one is better for yourself. And the good thing about VPNs is that it also encrypts the data that you're sending and receiving, so that you'll be able to avoid those man-in-the-middle attacks. So for example, let's say you're browsing online inside a mall and you're using the mall Wi-Fi. Okay, like for example here, or maybe you're using a telco's provided Wi-Fi. Okay, any Wi-Fi that you see, of course, outside home or outside your private home is considered as public Wi-Fi, and that's why you need to avoid using those kinds of access points. And it's also important that if you're going to use those internet source providers, make sure that you're using VPN and you don't do sensitive transactions such as banking, or let's say you're accessing some secure messaging communications, or let's say a very secure email, or let's say you're sending out passwords. Okay, don't do those on that particular network. Okay, and if possible, if you have your own mobile data, you can just use your own personal hotspot. Okay, so even if those are provided by the telcos, okay, those are still considered as public Wi-Fi, because again, it is open to everyone that registers on that particular access point. And of course, to register for that access point, usually you also be giving out your data, maybe in the form of an email or maybe in the form of a mobile number. So again, don't just freely give out your information, especially if there might be some access points that are considered something like a honeypot, maybe a fake Wi-Fi. Okay, those are also possible. So that's why it's very, very dangerous if you're going to access Wi-Fi outside. And if it's better, it's still better to have your own personal hotspot. Okay, that it might be expensive, but at least you know that you're using your own mobile data. Now, how to activate or share the personal hotspot? Okay, these are examples for the iOS and for the Android. Okay, maybe you could just take a screenshot of this particular page, and of course, you make sure you change the default Wi-Fi password to something very long or very hard to guess. And I forgot to include here, make sure that you also change the name of your device. Okay, sometimes when you emit the personal hotspot, it also emits your name. Okay, so they'll be able to figure out, this particular person is using this particular device as a hotspot in this particular area. So they're aware that you're in that particular area. Okay, so just feel free to navigate on these particular settings. And of course, um, be cautious to, or be careful of using too much, especially if you're just using another person's mobile data, because that mobile data might be limited only. Okay, there are some settings such as low data usage setting or something to limit your usage of it. Okay, what else? In the case of preserving your privacy in the form of the web browsers, you can make sure that you switch off the location, the microphone, and the camera settings on apps, especially now that we're usually performing video conferencing, or let's say as simple as doing emails, or let's say participating in webinars. Make sure that by default these are switched off. Okay, it's all right if websites have to ask you every now and then. At least you have an idea that they want access, they trying to access this particular data source, or let's say this particular data folder on your computer. Okay, in the form, let's say in the case of cameras, use camera cover. So at least if by accident you left the video switch on or enabled, at least you know that it's still covered. It doesn't have to be exactly as this particular product, but they can just improvise through DIY, maybe in the form of a paper or a sticky note or a sticker. And this can be tricky though in the form when you're going to deploy this on your camera phone, because some smartphones right now use the front-facing camera to authenticate the user. Okay, so that's why it can be tricky when it comes to using this. But for laptops, definitely use it. Okay. Now, let's say you're sharing websites to, let's say, social media or via messages. Avoid using the accelerated mobile pages or AMP version of those particular websites. Okay. Okay. Why? Because only means that, okay, here's an example of an AMP document. So that means this particular page is actually cached through Google, which means, again, Google will be able to track you, will be able to track your activities. Okay, so that's why, if possible, if you're going to share websites, you check first the URL. Okay, if it's reflecting some form of AMP or accelerated mobile page. Okay, and instead look for the actual page of that article on the official website and make sure that there's no AMP on that particular URL. Okay, although there are many forms of AMP documents, but at least you try to minimize the ways that Google can track you or your activities. Now, let's say in the case of computer privacy settings, those should be available now. Okay, you can check out the different settings, for example, for the microphone, for the sound, for the speaker, for the camera, for accessing your folders, or let's say in the form of advertising. If you want advertisements to appear on your apps or maybe on your web browsers, or let's say you want to check on the current configuration of your location services. Okay, you need to check on those. Every app usually you need to check. Just like, for example, if you're going to install an app and then it asks for a particular data source, for example, for the camera, for the location, verify or check it first if it really has to have access to that particular app. Okay. Likewise, not only in computers or not only in laptop computers, but also in tablet devices, especially the ones that are using, for example, for fitness, or let's say for your HomeKit devices, for home automations, or let's say for Bluetooth sharing, for photos, calendars, and of course, contacts as well as location services. Okay, those are important because, for example, you just need, for example, if you need to book a particular transportation service, okay, does it really need this? Is there really a need to access for a particular app or service to have access to your camera, or let's say to have access to your microphone? Okay, maybe not. So that's why you need to check on every app. At least in the recent Worldwide Developer Conference from Apple, they are actually rolling out something with with the App Store, which mean that every app will now show what particular connections to other apps, or let's say what particular data does this particular app have access to. Okay, so that's very good because it also shows the privacy of a particular application. Now, since we're also using Zoom, okay, in some countries or in some companies, they're actually tagging Zoom as a malware, which is not really, but there are ways on how to check, or let's say on how to secure and enable the privacy settings of Zoom. So this particular article on tidbits.com, it actually lists out those particular practices on how to address those privacy and security issues, or maybe the flaws. Okay. All right. So just check that out later on. Now, for web browsers, you can prevent websites from tracking you if you visit one website and to another website by enabling this particular prevention of cross-site tracking. This is on Safari, and this is also available on Firefox. You can send the websites a do not track signal that you don't want to be tracked. Okay, so it prevents cross-site tracking. What else? Let's say you want to check on plugins too. There are add-ons available. There are so many add-ons. One example would be uBlock Origin. So this one is an example of a plugin on Mozilla Firefox, which actually can block let's say the trackers or ads. Okay, but of course there are many add-ons also aside from this particular add-on. So this is just one example. Now, in the case of, let's say, you want to participate in an online conversation, okay? In the past, you're fond of using avatars before, let's say in the form of an anime, and then I think that was the time of Friendster. And when I was using Friendster, it took me about maybe 6 or 7 months before I actually uploaded my actual or my real photo. So my default photo was something like an anime, and then Friendster was there, and then Facebook came, of course. So everyone merged into migrated to the bigger platform. But if you're thinking about it, since we're trying to control or download all of your data, or let's say you need to have control over all of the data over the internet, it's very important that you just need to use an avatar. Okay, the good thing with avatars is that you can now customize avatars to look similar as yourself, but it doesn't have those, the very, very specific aspects. At least it can't be used to perform facial recognition on you because it's an avatar. It's only just a made up avatar, for example, in the form of an emoji or memoji. You can just use this instead of actual faces for your profile photos. For example, for Zoom, or let's say when you're going to talk in a conference, or let's say in a webinar, you can just use that as your photo. And then, for example, and there are some instances where video conferencing apps can make use of plugins that apply some form of a talking a talking head or something, and then it doesn't reflect your actual facial data. Okay, so you can just use this across all of your platforms, and then you try to download or minimize the use of your facial data. Okay, however, the catch there is that it's very hard to control your facial data if your friends, or let's say your contacts, are actually uploading them on a particular platform. Okay, that's very, very challenging indeed. Okay, now in this particular in recent news, okay, there's the issue on Face app. Okay, they're saying that there's a privacy risk with Face app because it's trending again. Okay, they're saying that there's a privacy risk with this particular app, but they're forgetting the fact that Facebook is actually a larger one. I mean, a larger platform that actually has privacy risk. Okay, so this is ironic because they're saying that this can be a threat to privacy, but they're still using Facebook. Okay, so this is actually very ironic. Okay, so again, to avoid uploading your facial data on any platform, sometimes what I do is that I think there's a particular platform where it can generate through artificial intelligence a random face okay, or random person's face that does not really exist. But I forgot the website, but you can actually use that to test out a particular app or a particular website. At least you're not using your own and you're not using another person's picture, because it's just AI generated image. You can use that, but I forgot the website. Maybe you can share it on the chat rooms right now. I think it's something like this. Not this person does not exist. Something. Okay. What else? Most importantly, you need to perform password hygiene. So, for example, you can use password managers such as 1Password. You can use LastPass. There are open source password managers. I think Bitdefender, if I remember correctly. Okay. I think it's Bitwarden. Okay. So use those password managers so that you won't have to use the same password for every website that you visit, and you can even make it generate a very, very strong password for you without having to remember it, because you only need to just remember one master password to access that particular app. Okay, so there are open source and there are also free password managers, so try to just check on that. And at the same time, in the case of password hygiene, take note, or you might want to revisit your security questions. For example, your security questions for your banking accounts or for your email accounts, or let's say the mobile numbers that you're using, are those still updated on those accounts that you use? Okay, so you can actually get all of those data on a single password manager and make it generate for you and store it for you securely and privately. And at the same time, at least it's also one way of doing a password hygiene across all of your platforms, because some password managers also analyze if you have or if you're using this particular password on another app. Okay, so it will recommend to you that you need to change this because it has duplicates on another app or website. Okay, now let's say in the case that you're worried if your email address is involved in a data breach, you can check this website called haveibeenpwned.com. You can check your account involvement in data breaches. Okay, just like what I mentioned before on my very first slides. You can also use, for example, let's say on your Mac, you can use Little Snitch. This is an app which is a form of a network monitor. So you can check, for example, if this particular application or website is transmitting a data to one particular location, you can check it out. Okay, you can verify it if it's really legit, and if it's suspiciously transmitting data to another unknown country or city, then you can block it. You can deny that particular transmission. Okay, there's also the Tor browser, the Onion Router browser. So you can defend yourself against tracking and surveillance. So why is it called the Onion? Because again, an onion is, an onion has many layers, right? So just like here, it has many layers of encryption. Okay, what else? Let's say, for example, if you have super powered computers, you can use virtual machines. So you can actually monitor the network transmissions or data transmissions happening inside your computer. You can even install Tails. This one is in the form of a USB drive or a DVD drive. I mean, a DVD media. It's a live operating system, usually the form of Linux, where you can use it in the moment that you need access to a computer and you don't want to use the default installed OS on that particular computer. At least you can just boot this on the USB, and then it will leave no trace on the computer you're using unless you ask it explicitly. Okay. Now for Android devices, of course, these are installed or pre-installed with with Google's Android OS platform. You can even change it. You can change the OS. Just check if it's compatible with the Lineage OS or the Graphene OS for Android devices. At least you will be free from the Google platform. Okay. Now for emails, you can use Proton Mail. So this is free. Okay. There's also Signal. Okay. Don't use Signal instead of Viber. Use Signal instead of Telegram. Okay. Though the problem here with Signal is that it will require you a mobile number for you to subscribe to this particular service. However, Signal is now trying to move away from requiring mobile numbers. Okay, let's just wait for that. And the good thing is that Signal app is also recommended by, if you know the whistleblower Edward Snowden. He's actually advocating this particular platform. Okay, and then if you're trying to if you want to explore a platform, a messaging platform that doesn't require an email address or a mobile number, you can actually check out this particular platform called Riot.im. So I'm trying to explore it because this one is using a decentralized form of messaging, and you can even deploy your own instance on your own server. So this is very good. So we're still trying to explore the features, and it seems great. And it doesn't require a mobile number, and it doesn't require an email address. Now, if you're using Viber, maybe you're aware that some of your friends or maybe your own birthday data are being transmitted or being shown to your acquaintances, or let's say to your contacts from other organizations. So Viber is not really privacy first if you think about it, and it has ads, and also the fact that the problem with Viber is that if you're going, well, I actually tried downloading my data from Viber upon knowing that it's showing the birthday. And then I was able to get the data from Viber. And then when I uncompressed it, I tried looking for my birthday data. It wasn't there. Okay. The problem is that they have it on their app, but it's saying that the downloaded data doesn't reflect the existence of that particular birthday. So that's actually weird because it has the capability to also announce that birthdays to other contacts as well. Even if you don't know that person, there's a chance, especially right now, that there are so many Viber group communities that are being used by different companies. Okay, just to announce something to the public. They're using Viber communities, and it's very, very problematic. So avoid using Viber. Okay, there's an option called Wire. I think this is an alternative for Slack, for the Slack platform. Now, let's say you're using, of course, since we're in the academe, if you're using Google for education, the Google has a pledge, or it's saying that it won't use your data. I mean, the data coming from the G Suite for Education platform for data mining. Okay, so it won't use it for data mining. But the problem here is that once you integrate that particular at gmail.com account to your, let's say, at up.edu.ph account, then Google has a way of tracking you. Okay, because the moment that you integrate it, for example, you signed in on the same session, or let's say on the same browser, or maybe even on the same computer, then there's already a way for Google to track that those particular two accounts in different platforms are related. Okay, so do not integrate Google accounts. Okay, do not integrate your at Gmail with, or let's say your G Suite for Education accounts to any other Google account. Now, let's say if you're fond of watching YouTube, you can use invideo.us or YouTube to watch YouTube videos privately. Or let's say you're going to distribute or publish our YouTube URL, you can just load the YouTube URL here on InvidUse, generate it, then share it to your social media, or let's say on your communications, or let's say on your chats. It will generate an InvidUse that URL, which is leading on a page, doesn't contain the ads, just like in this particular example from DuckDuckGo page there, why your privacy is worth more than you think. Okay, so it doesn't have the ads that that you usually see on a particular YouTube page. Okay. Then let's say you don't want to always visit the YouTube regularly, and you just want to play the same video all over again. Then I suggest that you just download it offline. There's a facility called youtube-dl.org to download YouTube videos for offline usage, and the same utility, or YouTube-DL, can also be used to download other videos from other platforms. Let's say, for example, from Facebook. If it's doing a Facebook Live video, you just get that particular URL and then put it here. The syntax is YouTube-DL and then the URL of that particular video, and that it will get the video from you without you having to create an account on Facebook or view it on Facebook, or let's say view it on YouTube. At least you have the actual audio file. Okay. It also saves bandwidth at the same time. Now, also avoid integrating online accounts. If there's an option to sign in with or sign up with your email address, then use it, and avoid integrating it with Google. Avoid integrating it with Facebook. Okay, because if you integrate it with those particular platforms, then again, there's a way for you to be tracked by those particular big tech companies as well. Okay, in this particular facility by Apple, signed with Apple, I think Apple now, I think Apple can generate a different email address when you use a sign in with Apple on a particular platform. Okay, so at least this one is, of course, in the case of Apple, it is very, very oriented into privacy. Now, this is one thing, one very important thing, especially now that many parents are fond of this. Avoid sharing, avoid uploading pictures of kids. Okay, not only your own but also other kids, and avoid sharing too much information. That, for example, the birthdays. For example, I think I saw a particular video on TV, on a particular cable TV channel, showing up the birthdays of the kids. And avoid doing those, avoid engaging with those. Okay, unfortunately, the trend now with social media is that for you to participate in a particular online competition or contest or raffle, you need to upload it on Instagram or Facebook. Then you need to have many likes. So imagine now the consequences of that particular data leaking everywhere, all over the world. Okay, so avoid sharing. And of course, don't engage with TikTok again. It's harvesting your data. And now, if you're going to check out, for example, in January 2020, the world's most used social platforms, you have there, of course, TikTok. Okay, be cautious of those particular apps and be aware of the developers of those apps as well. Okay, so delete TikTok. Of course, most importantly, I will suggest delete Facebook, delete Instagram, and ditch Google. In my case, I think I've deleted my Facebook more than a year now. Of course, after I requested my data from it. So you don't just deactivate it. Of course, it can be hard. It can be hard to delete it right away. It takes about some form of a step by step. Okay, you do it one step at a time. Of course, you need to check first on how you can engage alternatively to those communities that you're subscribed to. Then once you have those particular ways of communicating with those, let's say, groups or communities or pages, then you can just request your data from, or download a copy of your information. Let Facebook generate for you, and then it will notify you if the download zip file is ready. Okay, the file size of that particular compressed data will vary on how you have, I mean, on the amount of data that you will publish on the platform. So, for example, in my case, I think it is around maybe about 1 or 2 gigabytes. Okay, but if you're fond of sharing so much photos and videos, then that can even be larger or bigger. Okay, so once you have downloaded it, then you can definitely delete it. I think it's there are options in the form of JSON files and also HTML files. Then it will show to you, for example, the IP addresses that you've used, the devices that you've used, the deleted private messages, everything. Okay, even the interconnections with different apps that are aware that it's actually trying to access with this particular app that you have on your phone. You'll also get it from that particular information data. Okay, so if I were you, I will try to log in. If you still have a Facebook account, I will log in there. I try to request for my data, and then wait for it, and then download it. Then maybe if you think it's scary that it's tracking you, then it really is scary, then delete it right away. Okay. Like, for example, of course, there are some people that would say, for example, Facebook is evil and I want to quit, but how can I when all my friends and family use it? Okay. Again, you should be aware now that there are less evil or social media platforms. Okay. And always think that, for example, if someone doesn't interact with you because you're not on Facebook, maybe they probably aren't that good of a friend anyway. Okay. Like, for example, I have some friends, for example, from the in the medicine field, okay, they're trying now. Actually, some of them have already deleted their Facebook accounts, and they're trying to think if if their followers on their pages will still follow them on another platform. Okay, so what I said to them is that if they really value you, or let's say if they really value your insights or your ideas or your knowledge that you're sharing to that particular page or platform, then they will definitely still follow you on another platform. Okay, so that's always the notion. Okay, and you need to remember that. Now, if let's say you are a non-Facebook user and then you want to access a particular government website, this is what you will see, and it keeps on popping there because it really wants you to create an account or maybe to sign an account just to access the information. Okay, and the way that it's designed like that, it's really an forcing you because it's very the pop-up is irritating to the point that I just register and sign in instead so that I'll get rid of this pop-up. Okay, so that means again you're not engaging to Facebook. But if you think about information dissemination, then it should be publicly available without having the hassle of these pop-ups, which means if you have your own official website, for example, a gov.ph website or a school website, then use it, not Facebook. Okay, it should be that the information is always on your website and not going out of your official website. Okay. Okay, there are some platforms right now that can be competing with Facebook. Okay, maybe there's MeWe, but I'm not really advocating it. I'm just telling to you that maybe you can try this one, but try it at your own risk. All right. And for search engines, okay, or let's say you want a browser, there's DuckDuckGo search engine, the search engine that doesn't track you. And in the case of, let's say you want to install it on your computer, okay, so DuckDuckGo can actually detect the trackers on a particular website. Okay, like for example, on the Stay Safe website, which is very controversial, there. And it's also available in the App Store, Play Store, and you can even add to Safari. And here's a tweet from DuckDuckGo. If you're convinced it's time to delete Facebook, suppose I go to a restaurant and book using my name and phone number. The restaurant sends that data to Facebook. Facebook could then tell if I saw an ad word which led me to make a purchase. So imagine that particular consequences right now. If you're going to transact, let's say in a particular shop inside a mall, then there are chances that this can possibly happen. Okay, you can also use NextDNS. Okay, no sign up required. You can try it for free. It blocks ads, trackers, and malicious websites on all of your devices. Okay, can even protect your kids and control what they can access online. Okay, there's also a utility called the Piehole, a network-wide ad blocking, a black hole for internet advertisements. Okay, this is very good because you can just install it using a Raspberry Pi. Okay, a credit card size computer. Okay, I think the latest is Raspberry Pi 4, and then you can actually configure it now to, for example, block these ads coming from this particular website or block these ad URLs. You can make use of a whitelist or a block list, okay, for those particular list of ad sources or advertisement sources. Okay, you can install it there, and it's cheap. I think it's around $35. Okay. Now, let's say you want to have information about privacy. Of course, we have here in the Philippines, there's the National Privacy Commission. It's on privacy.gov.ph. So they have information about, of course, the Data Privacy Act of 2012. You can just read about it. And also, they definitely have tips on how to protect your privacy as well. Or let's say on how to file, let's say, a data privacy complaint for a particular website or app or a service. Okay, or let's say there's a data breach. Okay, you can just check out this particular website. There are so many information on that particular portal. Okay, now for in other countries, or let's say this particular organization called the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Okay, I'm also a member of this one. This is the leading nonprofit defending digital privacy, free speech, and innovation. Usually, they are very vocal when it comes to flagging out if there are websites that have privacy issues. Okay, like for example, I think they they have an issue before with Slack. Okay, because if you're using a free account on Slack, then you can't. There's no way to delete your data from Slack. Okay, I'm not sure regarding the status of that one, but they're actually trying to um, make note of those apps or websites that have privacy issues. Okay, and of course they're also defending free speech, and also they fight surveillance. So they don't want people to be surveilled by the cameras. For example, especially nowadays, that it's very important that activism is different from terrorism. Okay, so those are really important, and it's actually EFF that is defending the surveillance or fighting the surveillance. Okay, now let's in the case of, for example, in the case of pandemic, okay, there can be some instances when governments demand use surveillance powers. So we need to ask these, like, for example, has the government shown its surveillance would be effective at solving the problem? Or would this particular surveillance technology do too much harm to our freedoms? Like, for example, the right to privacy or the right to be left alone. Are the safeguards sufficient? Like, for example, let's say in the case of contact tracing, okay, there are cases of contact tracing apps or platforms that have all of the data stored on a centralized server. Okay, so it's very important to know or check the specific safeguards. For example, in the case of consent, minimization, information security, if it's made by privacy by design, if there's community control, transparency, anti-bias expression, enforcement, and of course, most importantly, expiration. Like, for example, in the case of the pandemic, okay, there are definitely contact tracing data available, but in the event that the pandemic is over, maybe there's no longer a need to retain those particular data. Okay, and better if the data is actually decentralized than centralized. Okay. Now, in the case, for example, with Apple and Google, they have a partnership on COVID-19 contact tracing technology. Okay, of course, there will be some who oppose it because, for example, in the case of Apple and Google's partnership, or let's say in any particular contact tracing application, imagine now, for example, that let's say the moment that you're required by your company to go to work, okay, they could possibly say that we'd love you to go back to work, but you need to opt into using the contact tracing framework to do so, which means you need to download the contact tracing app on your phone just for them to allow you to go to work. Okay, so that means at least, well, if you have a choice, but if you think about it, they shouldn't be requiring you to install such app, especially if that app is really tracking you. Okay. And this is ACLU's comment, or American Civil Liberties Union's white paper, or the limits of location tracking in an epidemic. So there are so many articles about this saying that maybe there are some contact tracing apps that, contact tracing can still be done in a way that doesn't have to harm human rights. Okay. Again, so to add my slide now, to add my presentation, this is a quote from Mikko Hipponen. So you might not have anything to hide, but again, you have everything to protect, especially that data is always leaking everywhere. Okay, so that's it. So thank you very much, and I welcome Q&As. Thank you.
Sir Noel. But before, let us give time also to Sir Noel to catch his breath for a few minutes before we go to Q&A. Just some announcement that just please note that the attendance to this lecture series is free. However, certificates of attendance will be provided by the organizers to CSP members only. So please also kindly accomplish our evaluation so that the organization would know what if you appreciate the webinars and how we can further improve it also. And we would like to invite you on our next lecture series that is next Wednesday, 9 to 10:30. Also have from 11 to 12:30. The talk for 9 a.m. The speaker is Dr. Estuar of Ateneo de Manila University. And at 11 a.m. we have Sir Josie Bayan. Okay, let us now proceed with the question and answer, Sir Noel. From Ma'am Melanie Unida. Actually, she has comment also.
Okay.
Idea overload because everything is really relevant, sir. Okay,
All right.
question. Possible to block a specific Google Chrome URL in sending messages.
Okay, in the case of this one, I'm not sure what you're referring to by Google Chrome URL, but if you don't have Google Chrome on your device, then that's good. So I'm not sure what you meant by blocking the specific Google Chrome URL in sending messages. Maybe it depends. It really depends on, let's say, for example, there are some devices, or let's say there are some, for example, you can configure also your router to block it. Okay, there are ways to do it network wide. And there are also ways on how to block it using your phone. So we can just install those. For example, there's Better Blocker, and you can also block the specific URL. Yeah. And then, yeah, since the question is it possible, yes, then it is possible. The answer is it's possible.
Another comment from Sir Francis Hadia. Uh, Informative and useful tips to everyone. Thanks, Sir Noel. Okay,
Okay, thank you too.
from Sir Wesley George Amador, what is the recommended solution for data, privacy, security for remote work and remote learning?
Okay, so this is a very a big question actually. Okay, for the recommended solutions for data privacy security, I would say that, for example, since in the case of remote learning, considering that we're in a school, then you need to check the apps that you need to of course you need to establish first the platform that you're going to use for remote work and remote learning, and then check, for example, let's say if teachers want to use this particular service, check it first if it jives with your privacy policy, of course, because every institution also has its own privacy policies. There's no one band-aid for everything, but make sure that it doesn't conflict with your platform. Like, for example, if your institution doesn't have a partnership with Facebook, I hope it doesn't have one, then don't make them require, or don't encourage them to use Facebook for your remote work or remote learning practices or transactions. Okay, so you just use only, for example, the officially authorized apps and platforms. Okay, don't use another app that is not being recommended by your, or that is not being endorsed by your maybe your IT administrator. Okay, so that is the recommended solution. There's no really one big band-aid, but you just need to check that, for example, for every app that you're going to use for remote work or remote learning, check the privacy policy of that application. And you also need to check, for example, let's say, most importantly, since people are confined at home, and if they don't have an office issued or school issued laptop, then chances are they'll be forced to use their own computers at home. Okay, and that becomes a problem because, of course, that is, you're not aware of the security software or tools that are installed on that particular device. So in that case, maybe you can, in the case of using computers at home, you can just create a new account just to make sure that your work or your school data doesn't mix up with other data. Okay.
Okay, sir. From Dr. Jam Mateo, according to him, he is a pro avatar. But in case of online classes, shall we use avatars also when using apps for online conferencing?
Well, in the case of, I think this is in the case of online classes, you can actually make use of avatars, but the problem with that, of course, is that, of course, the avatar should be safe for work or safe for school, and also depends on the preference of the professor, because maybe if the professor is more visual oriented, then he or she can recall the student. But again, it really depends. For example, sometimes you just need to know the name. There's no really need for the usage of a particular actual photo. So yes, you can always there's always an option to using avatars for that, as long as it's not affecting the, as it's not affecting the experience, the online classroom experience. Okay.
Okay, sir, from Sir Francis Balahadia. How can we help or protect our student to protect their data during online class, especially we use different LSM and video conference app?
Okay, in the case of this one, usually if you're going to be a purist when it comes to privacy and security, then that would mean implementing security practices such as encryption. Okay, which means you need to encrypt your document. You need to encrypt your, for example, if you have a homework, you need to encrypt it to make sure that you and only the recipient can access it. Okay, and let's say if you want to help your protect your student to protect your data during online class, then of course make sure that you're using. I hope that you already. I mean, I hope that the students already have their own school email accounts as well. Okay, because if they're using an at Gmail or non-school email, then it becomes a problem because that also opens up to possible malicious activities. Okay, so you can help protect our student. You can help protect your student and protect their data, of course, by also making sure that the apps are always updated and they're on their computers, especially now that some schools are going into a one-to-one learning. I mean, one device to one student learning. Then there should be a way for you to verify that the device is always updated, or just remind the student to always update their devices so they get also the latest security updates. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Sir, from Sir Danny J. Rompon, how about the G Suite for education? Is it safe for schools? Because then the ICT is recommending for it for schools. What is your stand about this?
Okay. As long as as long as you can still trust the Google's pledge, the student privacy pledge, then the G Suite for education should be fine. It's safe. But the moment that you integrate it with your at gmail.com account, then Google can track everything. Okay. Now, if you're going to look for an alternative to Google search, there's actually DuckDuckGo. Okay, there's a DuckDuckGo search engine.
Okay. I think we don't have question anymore. From Sir Blendy, just thank you. Thank you very much, CSUP and Sir Noel.
I also accommodate more challenging questions, like for example regarding Facebook.
We have one Papa Noel. Do you make online purchases and use online banking?
Come again, sorry. Do you make yes, of course. Okay, actually, my tip there, for example, let's say you want to engage in a Viber group or community. If it's possible, you create. You make use of a prepaid number, a new prepaid number that is not associated with your account. Okay, here's now the maybe something like maybe problematic, but the problem is that people are saying that, for example, fake accounts are dangerous. They're saying that, okay. But the good thing about the internet in its early stages of development is that there's anonymity on the internet, and that actually balances everything, okay. And in that particular time, there was no there's no online libel, there was no cyber libel of those sorts. But the problem here is now the platforms, the big tech platforms such as Facebook, there are some suggestions from different people saying that, oh, you need to have Facebook require users to verify that that it's really their own account. That becomes a problem. Why? Because it's performing as something like a know your customer or a KYC process, which means it actually validates it, and at the same time it can possibly destroy the privacy of a particular account. Okay, like for example, you can always create a fake account. I mean, not really a fake account, but maybe a screen account or a screen name. That's why there's called a screen name before, before the fake accounts emerge. there were screen names. We were using it for example, for Yahoo Messenger before, or let's say for the IRC, Internet Relay Chat. Okay, the early stages, maybe in the late 1990s. Okay, we're free to use any of those particular screen names. Okay, um, because of the benefits of privacy. But now the problem is the big tech companies such as Facebook. They're saying that, or I mean, some advocates of Facebook are saying that, oh, you can always verify your account. Okay, but the problem with that is, of course, the problem of identity theft, because your data is there. They know that your identity or your data is there, then they can easily create a duplicate account of that particular profile. Okay, so that's why they're saying that, for example, for the Facebook, they're saying, I mean, in the past, I mean, from maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was a saying that there was a bug or a glitch with the Facebook creating the dummy accounts. But if you think about it, identity theft has been happening already, even before that, for years ago already. So that's why, since people are very much engaged, or they already invested on this particular big platform, then it's easier for them actually to I mean, it's easier for malicious hackers to get I mean, to perform identity theft on those particular persons. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for the useful information, Sir Noel from Mamfe Hablanida. Okay, Sir Noel, may isang pahabol po dito. Do you think we can release all the cyber attack now? Do we have agency or group who can handle it? Which department or agency would that be under?
I think there's an agency already with the DICT. Okay. In the case of the DICT, it has partnerships also, I think, with PNP if there is in the case of cyber crimes. Okay, but again, since my focus now, my focus on the webinar is more on the privacy. Okay, I actually I actually watched a webinar recording yesterday employing their the practices, cybersecurity practices on how to protect yourself. But the problem with that is they're forgetting the fact that digital privacy is also important. Okay, you don't just use, for example, you can change your passwords, etc. But there's also a need for you to be anonymous. And that's actually, of course, it creates a balance. For example, in the case of, let's say, for police agencies or police groups, okay, it creates a balance because there's still privacy, even if you want to enforce security. To make it more visual, to understand privacy more importantly or easily, imagine, for example, if you have a house, then you have a locked door. A locked door meaning there's a security, but if your door is transparent, then there's no privacy. Okay, so imagine that you can always have security in place, but privacy is not always there. Okay, maybe the door is transparent. Okay, so that's important. So if some people are asking, is this secure? Is this secure? Yes, it can be secure, but the problem is that maybe the big tech company handling your records or processing your data, they can actually read it on their own, and that becomes a problem.
Okay, thank you, Sir Noel. Thank you very much, Sir Noel, for your time, for your expertise, for sharing your expertise to our audience. And also, in behalf of the CSP and UP Computer Science, we also would like to thank our attendees. So let me also thank our organizers for putting these things together. Sir Alfred of our CSP Secretariat, Sir Rafi Cabredo of De La Salle University, our colleagues from the Department of Computer Science of UP Diliman, Dr. Jimmy Caro, and the rest of our CSP Board of Directors. Thank you. Again, thank you, Sir Noel.
Thank you too.
Okay po. This is Lani Maceda from Bicol University and Computing Society of the Philippines, your moderator this morning. So a pleasant good morning to all. Together, let us surmount the challenges against COVID-19. Have a nice day, everyone.
Bye.